The gunshot that killed Vernon Hartley echoed through the canyon, just as the sun began its descent behind the jagged peaks of western Arizona. And his daughter Victoria knew in that terrible instant that her life would never be the same. She pressed herself against the rocky outcropping where her father had told her to hide, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she watched three men on horseback circle his crumpled form below. The year was 1878, and the desert stretched endlessly in all directions around their small mining camp, offering nowhere to run and no one to hear her scream. Her father had discovered something in these hills, something valuable enough that these men wanted it badly enough to kill for it. And now she was alone with nothing but the clothes on her back, and the knowledge that she would be next if they found her. The riders searched her father's body, taking his leather satchel and the papers he always kept close. Victoria memorized their faces in the dying light, burning their features into her memory even as tears streamed down her dust-covered cheeks. The leader was a man with a thick black beard and a scar running down his left cheek. His companions were younger, meaner-looking, their eyes constantly scanning the rocks as if they sensed her presence. She held her breath as one of them looked directly at her hiding spot, his hand resting on his pistol. Her father had been teaching her the mining trade these past 2 years since her mother died of fever, and at 20 years old, she knew these hills as well as anyone. But that knowledge meant nothing now against 3 armed killers. They left as darkness fell, taking her father's horse and supplies with them. Victoria waited until she could no longer hear the hoofbeats before she scrambled down to where her father lay. She knelt beside him, pressing her forehead to his cooling hand, and let herself cry until no more tears would come. Then she did what needed doing. The ground was too hard to dig properly, but she covered him with rocks and spoke the words she remembered from her mother's funeral. She took his pocket watch, the only thing the killers had missed, and tucked it into her dress pocket. The walk to Mineral Park took her most of the night. Her boots were meant for riding, not walking, and by the time she saw the scattered lights of the town, her feet were bleeding. The main street was empty in the pre-dawn darkness except for a few horses tied outside the saloon. She stumbled past the assay office, the general store, the bank, all closed and dark. She had no money, no family, and no idea what to do next. Her father's claim was everything they owned, and now someone had killed him for it. She made it to the front of the sheriff's office before her legs gave out. She sat down hard on the wooden steps, her vision swimming. She must have passed out because the next thing she knew, someone was shaking her shoulder gently. Miss, you all right?" She opened her eyes to find a man crouching beside her, his face shadowed by his hat in the early morning light. He was young, maybe 25, with sun-weathered skin and concerned gray eyes. A drifter by the look of him, with travel-worn clothes and a bedroll tied to his back. "I need the sheriff," she managed to say. "My father's been murdered." The man's expression darkened. "Sheriff's out of town. Won't be back for 3 days, maybe more." He rode to Prescott with a prisoner. Victoria felt what little hope she had drained away. 3 days. You got somewhere to stay, someone who can help you. She shook her head. The movement made the world tilt dangerously. When had she last eaten? Yesterday morning, before everything went wrong, the man seemed to make a decision. "Come on, let's get you some food and water, then you can tell me what happened." "I don't have any money." "I didn't ask if you did." He helped her to her feet with a gentle grip on her elbow. "Name's Samuel Fletcher. Most folks call me Sam, Victoria Hartley." She tried to walk and stumbled. Her feet felt like they were on fire. Without a word, Sam swept her up into his arms. She was too exhausted to protest. He carried her down the street to a small boarding house and kicked the door open with his boot, An older woman appeared, wiping her hands on her apron. "Samuel Fletcher, what have you gotten yourself into now?" Found her passed out at the sheriff's office, Mrs. Patterson. "Says her father's been killed. She needs food, water, and a place to rest. I'll work it off, whatever it costs." Mrs. Patterson's weathered face softened immediately. "Put her in the back room. I'll bring breakfast." She disappeared into her kitchen without another word. Sam carried Victoria through a narrow hallway to a small but clean room. He set her down gently on the bed and removed his hat. In the morning light streaming through the window, Victoria could see him more clearly. He had dark brown hair that curled slightly at his collar, a strong jaw, and eyes that held a kindness that seemed at odds with the gun belt at his hip. A drifter, she had thought at first, but there was something more substantial about him, something steady. "Tell me what happened," he said, pulling up the room's only chair to sit by the bed. She told him everything. About the claim, about the men, about her father. Sam listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as she described the murders and the theft. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "These men," he finally said. "You say the leader had a scar down his left cheek. You know him." "Might. There's a man named Dutch Greer runs with a couple of young guns. They've been working this part of Arizona for a year now, jumping claims, running off prospectors. Nothing anyone could prove, but there've been whispers." He stood, pacing to the window. "Your father must have found something worth taking if they killed him for it. He found a vein. A rich one. He was going to file the claim officially this week, but he wanted to be sure first. He said it could set us up for life." Victoria's voice broke. "Now he's dead and those men have his papers." Mrs. Patterson arrived with a tray laden with eggs, bacon, biscuits, and coffee. She took one look at Victoria's feet and tutted loudly. "Those boots need to come off. Samuel, you step outside while I tend to this girl." Sam obeyed, closing the door behind him. Mrs. Patterson helped Victoria remove her ruined boots and bathed her feet in warm water with herbs. The older woman's hands were gentle but efficient. "I've known Sam Fletcher for 3 years now," she said as she worked. "He's a good man. Doesn't talk much about where he comes from, but he's helped more than a few people in this town. If anyone can help you sort this mess, it's him." "Why is he here? In Mineral Park, I mean. Same as everyone else, I suppose, looking for something, though I suspect he's looking for something he can't find in a mine." Mrs. Patterson wrapped Victoria's feet in clean bandages. "Get some sleep, dear. Things will look clearer once you've rested." But Victoria couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her father falling, heard the gunshot. She forced herself to eat the breakfast, knowing she would need her strength. Through the thin walls, she could hear Sam talking to Mrs. Patterson in the kitchen. "I'm going to ride out to the claim," he said. "See what I can learn." "That's not your trouble to take on, Sam. That girl's got no one, and if Dutch Greer killed her father, someone needs to do something about it. The sheriff will handle it when he gets back. 3 days is a long time. Greer could file that claim as his own, take whatever ore is there, and be gone before anyone thinks to question it." There was a pause. "Besides, I know what it's like to have no one." Victoria stood, ignoring the pain in her feet, and opened the door. Sam and Mrs. Patterson turned to look at her. "I'm coming with you," Victoria said. "I know where the claim is, and I can show you exactly what my father found." Sam shook his head. "You're in no condition to ride. Tell me where it is and I'll go. Those men are still out there. They might come back. I'm not sitting here helpless while someone else fights my battles." She lifted her chin. "My father taught me to shoot. I can take care of myself. Your feet are torn up, you've just lost your father, and you haven't slept in over a day." Sam's voice was firm but not unkind. "I'm not saying you can't handle yourself. I'm saying you need to heal first. And I'm saying I'm coming with you." Victoria crossed her arms. "It's my father's claim. Mine now, I suppose. You'll need me to testify about what happened anyway." They stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Sam sighed. "You're as stubborn as a mule in mud." "I'll take that as a compliment." Mrs. Patterson looked between them and laughed. "Lord help you both. At least wait until afternoon. Give her time to rest a bit, Sam. Whatever's out there will still be there in a few hours." Sam agreed reluctantly. Victoria lay back down, and this time exhaustion dragged her under despite her determination to stay awake. When she woke, the sun was high and someone had left clean clothes folded on the chair. She changed out of her torn and blood-stained dress, grateful for Mrs. Patterson's kindness. The new dress was simple brown cotton, practical and well-made. Sam was waiting on the boarding house porch with 2 horses. He'd acquired boots for her somehow, worn but serviceable and soft enough not to hurt her bandaged feet too badly. He helped her mount without comment on the way she winced. The ride to the claim took 2 hours. Victoria directed them through the maze of canyons and dry washes that made this part of Arizona territory so treacherous for newcomers. Sam rode easy in the saddle, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. He carried a rifle in addition to his pistol, and Victoria found herself grateful for his presence. "You never said why you were in Mineral Park," she said as they navigated a narrow pass. "Are you a prospector?" "Sometimes. I've done a bit of everything. Cowboy work mostly these past years. Drove cattle up from Texas, worked ranches in Colorado and New Mexico." He paused. "Truth is, I've been drifting since the war ended, never found a reason to settle anywhere particular." "The war." "But that ended in 1865. That's 13 years of drifting. Some men came home to families and farms. I came home to ashes and graves." His voice was flat, matter of fact. "My parents and sister died while I was gone. Our ranch was sold for unpaid taxes. Didn't seem much point in staying after that." Victoria understood that kind of loss. "My mother died 2 years ago. Fever. After that, it was just me and my father. He taught me everything about mining, about surviving out here. Said a woman needed to be able to take care of herself in this territory." "Sounds like a wise man." He was. Her throat tightened. "He was going to file the claim this week. We were going to have enough money to go back east if we wanted, or to build something real here. He always said he wanted to build me a proper house, not just a mining camp tent." They rode in silence for a while. The desert was beautiful in its harsh way, all red rock and blue sky and endless space. Victoria had grown to love it despite its dangers, or maybe because of them. Out here, you knew where you stood. The desert didn't pretend to be anything other than what it was. The claim came into view around midday. Victoria's stomach clenched when she saw the scattered remains of their camp. The tent was torn down, their supplies scattered and trampled. Someone had been here since last night searching for something. Sam dismounted slowly, his hand near his gun. "Stay here a minute." He walked through the camp, reading the signs in the disturbed dust. Victoria ignored his instruction and slid down from her horse. Her father's body was where she'd left it, still covered with rocks. She knelt beside the cairn, touching the stones gently. "They came back after dawn," Sam said, coming to stand beside her. "3 riders, like you said, searched the whole camp. They were looking for something they didn't find yesterday. The assay samples. My father kept them hidden in a coffee tin buried under the fire pit. He was paranoid about thieves." Victoria stood and walked to what remained of their cooking area. The fire pit had been dug up, the stones scattered. The coffee tin lay on its side, empty. "They found them. Can you show me the vein?" She led him up into the rocks, following the path she'd walked with her father 100 times. The entrance to the mine shaft was partially hidden by brush, just as they'd left it, but someone had been here too. Fresh boot prints marked the dust. Sam lit the lantern they kept at the entrance and led the way inside. The shaft wasn't deep, maybe 30 feet, but Victoria's father had been following a promising vein of quartz shot through with gold. In the lantern light, the gold gleamed like captured sunlight. Sam let out a low whistle. "That's rich ore, real rich. Your father was right to be excited." He examined the rock face closely. This vein could run deep. A claim like this, properly worked, could be worth thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. And now those men have the assay reports and my father's survey notes. Can they file the claim as their own? If they forge the paperwork, maybe. Depends on how careful the land office is. Sam turned to look at her. "But you're his heir. You have rights to this claim, and you can testify about what happened. We need to get you in front of the land office before Greer does." They rode back to town as the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the desert. Victoria was exhausted, her body and heart both aching, but she felt a spark of something else now too. Hope, maybe, or determination. She wasn't going to let her father's killers profit from their crime. In Mineral Park, Sam took her to the land office, but it was closed. A sign said it wouldn't reopen until Monday, 2 days away. He tried the assayer's office next, where a thin man with spectacles looked up from his workbench. "Mr. Hopkins," Sam said, "this is Victoria Hartley. Her father Vernon was killed yesterday out at his claim. She needs to file a report about his death and stake her inheritance claim." The assayer's expression turned sympathetic. "I heard Vernon was working something promising. I'm sorry for your loss, miss." He pulled out a ledger. "I can make a record of his death and your claim to the inheritance. When the land office opens Monday, you'll need to file the proper paperwork there, but this will establish the timeline." He looked at Sam. "Were you a witness to the death?" "No, but she was. 3 men killed him. We think they're going to try to file the claim as their own." Hopkins frowned as he wrote. "That's a serious accusation. You'll need to talk to Sheriff Cooper when he returns." They left the office as evening settled over the town. Victoria felt the exhaustion creeping back in, along with the grief she'd been holding at bay. Sam seemed to sense it because he didn't say anything, just guided her back to the boarding house. Mrs. Patterson had dinner waiting and Victoria ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Afterward, Sam walked her to her room. "Get some rest," he said. "I'll keep watch tonight, make sure no one comes looking for you." "You don't have to do that." "I know." He met her eyes. "But I'm going to anyway." That night, Victoria dreamed of her father. In the dream, he was showing her how to follow a vein of ore, his patient voice explaining the geology. She woke before dawn with tears on her face and the pocket watch clutched in her hand. She could hear someone moving around in the boarding house, probably Mrs. Patterson starting breakfast. When she emerged from her room, she found Sam asleep in a chair in the hallway outside her door. He'd kept watch all night, just as he'd said. She stood there for a moment, looking at him in the early morning light. His face was younger in sleep, less guarded. She wondered what he'd seen in his years of drifting, what he was running from or searching for. He woke as if sensing her gaze, instantly alert. "Morning, you sleep all right, well enough. You didn't have to stay out here all night." He stood, working the stiffness out of his shoulders. "Figured it wouldn't hurt to be careful. Dutch Greer's not the type to leave loose ends." They spent the day in town, staying visible, talking to people Sam knew. He introduced her to the blacksmith, the general store owner, the man who ran the livery. Each conversation served to establish her presence, her story, her claim. It was smart, Victoria realized. The more people who knew about her father's death and the claim, the harder it would be for Greer to steal it. Sunday morning, Victoria asked Sam to take her back to the claim. She wanted to bury her father properly, and she couldn't rest until it was done. He didn't argue, just got the horses ready and bought a shovel from the general store. The digging was hard in the rocky soil, but Sam worked steadily while Victoria gathered stones for a marker. She fashioned a cross from wood scraps at the camp and carved her father's name with a knife. When the grave was ready, they moved her father's body carefully, treating it with respect. Victoria spoke over the grave, saying words she'd heard preachers say but making them her own. "He was a good father. He taught me to be strong, to work hard, to never give up. He loved this desert and its possibilities. I'll make sure his claim produces what he knew it could. I'll build something lasting. I promise." Sam stood beside her, his hat in his hands, quiet and solid. When she finished, he helped her place the stones around the marker. They stood together in silence for a while, the desert wind the only sound. On the ride back, Victoria said, "I don't know how to thank you for all you've done. When this is settled, when I can access the claim's value, I'll pay you back for everything. Mrs. Patterson's room, the supplies, your time." Sam was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't respond. Finally, he said, "I'm not doing this for payment." "Then why?" He looked at her, and something in his gray eyes made her breath catch. "Because someone should. Because you deserve help. Because your father sounded like a good man who raised a strong daughter." He paused. "And because in 3 years of drifting through this territory, you're the first person who's made me want to stop moving." Victoria didn't know what to say to that. Her heart was beating too fast, and she couldn't look away from him. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you walked half the night on bleeding feet to get help. I know you stood up to me when you thought I was trying to sideline you. I know you're brave and determined, and you honor your father's memory." His voice was soft. "That's enough to know." They rode the rest of the way in silence, but it was different now, charged with something unspoken. Victoria's mind was whirling. She'd just buried her father, was in the middle of a fight for her future, and here was this drifter, this cowboy who'd appeared in her life at the worst moment, telling her he wanted to stay. Monday morning, they were waiting at the land office when it opened. The clerk, a fussy man named Perkins, listened to Victoria's story with increasing alarm. "That's a very serious claim, Miss Hartley. Murder and claim jumping. I'll need to see proof of your father's original filing. The men who killed him took his papers. But Mr. Hopkins at the assay office has records of my father's work, and I can show you the claim itself, show you that we've been working it." Perkins frowned. "Without the original filing documents, this could be complicated. If someone else files on that land claiming it was unclaimed or abandoned, I have to accept their filing unless you can prove otherwise." "But she just told you what happened," Sam said, his voice hard. "You going to let murderers profit because of paperwork?" "I'm going to follow the law, Mr. Fletcher, which is what I'm paid to do." Perkins looked at Victoria more kindly. "I'm not saying I don't believe you, miss. I'm saying you need more proof. Talk to the sheriff when he returns. Get statements from anyone who knew your father was working that claim. Bring me something I can use to establish your legal right." They left frustrated. On the street outside, Sam said, "We need to find someone who saw your father file his initial location notice. That's the first step in claiming land. He would have filed it here in town when he first found the vein." Victoria thought back. "He filed it 6 months ago, early March. He came into town specifically for that." They returned to the land office. After much searching, Perkins found the location notice. Vernon Hartley had indeed filed a claim on the land in question, properly dated and witnessed. But the claim had to be actively worked and a full claim filed within a year, or it would be considered abandoned. "This helps," Perkins admitted. "But you'll still need the sheriff to investigate the death before I can transfer the claim to you officially." And if someone else files on it in the meantime, claiming your father abandoned it, we'll have a legal mess." As if summoned by their fears, the door to the land office opened and 3 men walked in. Victoria recognized them immediately. The leader with the scarred face, the 2 younger men flanking him, Dutch Greer and his crew. Greer stopped when he saw Victoria, his eyes narrowing. Well, well. The little rabbit survived after all. Sam stepped in front of Victoria, his hand near his gun. "You need to leave, now." Greer smiled, showing tobacco-stained teeth. "This is a public office. We've got business here. We're filing a claim." "On the Hartley claim," Victoria said, her voice shaking with anger. "The claim you killed my father for." "Don't know what you're talking about, girl. We found an abandoned claim. Spent the last few days working it, making sure it was viable. Now we're filing proper." He pulled out papers from his coat. "All legal and official." "You murdered Vernon Hartley," Sam said quietly. "We all know it." "That's a dangerous accusation, Drifter. You got proof?" Greer looked at Perkins. "We filing this claim or not?" Perkins looked deeply uncomfortable. "Miss Hartley has claimed that land as her inheritance from her father, who filed the original location notice." "Then where's her claim paperwork? Where's proof she's been working it?" Greer tossed his papers on the counter. "We got everything we need right here. Assay reports, survey notes, witness statements that the claim was abandoned." "Those are my father's papers," Victoria said. "You stole them after you killed him. Prove it." Greer's smile was ugly. "Your word against ours. 3 witnesses who'll swear we found an empty claim and filed proper." The land office door opened again and Sheriff Cooper walked in, looking trail-worn and tired. He took in the scene with experienced eyes. "Sheriff," Victoria said immediately, "these men murdered my father 3 days ago. They stole his claim papers and now they're trying to file it as their own." Cooper, a grizzled man in his 50s with iron-gray hair, looked at Greer. "That true, Dutch?" "Not a word of it, Sheriff. The girl's confused, grieving maybe. We found an abandoned claim and we're filing it legal." "Vernon Hartley's dead?" "Yes," Victoria said. "They shot him at his claim on Friday evening. I witnessed it. I can show you where I buried him." The sheriff's expression hardened. "Dutch, you and your boys stay in town until I sort this out. Don't even think about leaving." He looked at Victoria. "Miss Hartley, I'll need a full statement." "Sam, you involved in this?" "I found her passed out at your office Saturday morning. I've been helping her since." Cooper nodded slowly. "All right. Everyone out except Miss Hartley and Sam. Dutch, I meant what I said. Don't leave town." Greer and his men left, but not before Greer gave Victoria a look that promised violence. She refused to look away, meeting his eyes until he was out the door. Victoria gave Sheriff Cooper the whole story. He listened carefully, taking notes. When she finished, he sat back in his chair. "This is a hell of a mess. It's your word against theirs, and they've got paperwork, even if it's stolen. Without other witnesses to the shooting, it's going to be hard to prove murder." "So they get away with it." Victoria's voice rose. "They kill my father and steal his claim, and there's nothing we can do." "I didn't say that. I said it'll be hard, but not impossible." Cooper stood. "Let me ride out to the claim, see what I can learn from the scene. In the meantime, you 2 stay close. If Greer thinks you're a threat, he might try to eliminate that threat." The next few days were tense. Sheriff Cooper investigated while Victoria waited in an agony of suspense. Sam barely left her side, and she found herself grateful for his steady presence. They fell into a routine, taking meals together at the boarding house, talking in the evenings on the porch. "Tell me about your family," Victoria said one night. "Your parents, your sister. If you want to, I mean." Sam was quiet for a long moment. "My father was a horse breeder. Loved those animals more than anything. My mother was a teacher before she married him. My sister was 12 when I left for the war, all braids and freckles and questions. His voice went soft. "I got one letter from my mother during the war. Said my father had died of a heart problem, said they were struggling but managing. I wrote back but never heard again. When I finally made it home in late '65, the ranch was gone. Found out my mother had died 6 months after my father. My sister went to live with neighbors, but she got sick that winter. The fever took her." Victoria reached out and took his hand. "I'm so sorry. It was a long time ago," but his hand tightened around hers. "After that, I just started moving, didn't matter where. Worked cattle drives, hired on at ranches, picked up odd jobs. Never stayed anywhere longer than a season. Figured there was no point in putting down roots when everything just dies anyway." "Is that really what you believe? That everything dies?" He looked at her in the dim porch light. "I used to. But lately I've started thinking maybe I was wrong. Maybe some things are worth the risk of losing." Her heart beat faster. "Sam, I know the timing's wrong. I know you're dealing with your father's death and the claim and everything else. But I need you to know that I'm not going anywhere. Not until this is settled. Not until you're safe." He paused. "Maybe not even then if you don't want me to go." Victoria didn't know what to say. She'd known this man for less than a week, but he'd become essential to her in that short time. She couldn't imagine facing the next day without him beside her. "I don't want you to go," she said quietly. "I don't know what that means or what happens after all this is over, but I don't want you to leave." He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. "Then I won't." Sheriff Cooper returned to town on Wednesday with news. "I found evidence at the claim. Shell casings that match the type of ammunition Dutch Greer's boys are known to use. Found tracks that put them at the site on Friday evening, right when you said the murder happened." He paused. "Also found something interesting. Your father had a partner early on, someone who helped him initially. Man named Jack Morrison. He's working a claim about 10 miles north. I talked to him. He confirms Vernon filed the original location notice and had been working the claim steadily. He'll testify to that." "Is that enough to arrest them?" Victoria asked. "It's enough to hold them while we build a stronger case, and it's enough to block their claim filing. Perkins won't accept it now, not with an active murder investigation." Cooper looked grim. "But I need you to understand something. Men like Dutch Greer don't go down easy. Even if we arrest them, even if we take them to trial, they've got connections. They might walk. Then what's the point? The point is we try. We do everything we can to get justice for your father." The sheriff stood. "I'm going to arrest them now. Sam, I want you to stay with Miss Hartley. If this goes bad, if any of them get away, she'll be in danger." That evening, Victoria heard the gunshots. 2 of them, sharp cracks that echoed through the town. She and Sam rushed to the street along with half of Mineral Park. Sheriff Cooper was standing outside the jail, his own gun drawn while deputies carried bodies inside. Victoria's stomach turned. One of Greer's young followers lay dead in the street. The other was wounded, being dragged inside. "Greer," Sam called. "In custody," Cooper said. "His boys tried to shoot their way out when I went to arrest them. Only Greer was smart enough to surrender. The wounded man died that night. Dutch Greer, alone now without his crew, sat in a cell and refused to talk." Victoria gave her official statement to the sheriff, and Sam backed her up with what he knew. Jack Morrison came to town and confirmed Vernon Hartley's ownership of the claim. A week later, Perkins at the land office officially recognized Victoria as the heir to her father's claim. The stolen papers were returned to her, recovered from Greer's belongings. She stood in the land office, holding her father's careful notes and surveys, and felt tears streaming down her face. Sam put his arm around her shoulders. "He'd be proud of you." "I have the claim," she said. "But I don't know how to work it properly. I know some of what my father taught me, but running a mine, selling the ore, all of that. You'll learn, and you'll have help." She looked up at him. "Will I, if you want it?" His gray eyes were serious. "I'm good with my hands. I can learn mining. And I'm tired of drifting, Victoria. I'm tired of moving from place to place with nothing to show for it. Your father wanted to build something lasting. I'd like to help finish what he started." "Why? Why me? Why this?" "Because in my whole life, I've never met anyone like you. Because you're strong and brave and you don't give up. Because when I look at you, I see a future, and I haven't seen that in 13 years. He took her hands. "And because I'm falling in love with you. Maybe already have fallen. I know it's too soon. I know it's complicated, but it's the truth." Victoria's breath caught. "Sam, You don't have to say anything back, not now. Just let me stay. Let me help you build what your father wanted. Let me prove that I mean what I say." She reached up and touched his face, feeling the roughness of his jaw under her palm. "What if I told you I was falling too? That every time I look at you, I feel like maybe my father's death brought something good into my life, even though I hate that it happened the way it did." He leaned his forehead against hers. "Then I'd say we'll figure it out together." Dutch Greer went to trial in Prescott 2 months later. Victoria testified, as did Sheriff Cooper and Jack Morrison. The evidence was overwhelming, and Greer was convicted of murder. He was hanged on a cold November morning. Victoria didn't attend. She was too busy working her father's claim with Sam at her side. They made a good team. Sam had a natural aptitude for mining, learning quickly from the books Victoria's father had collected. He was also good with people, negotiating with ore buyers and equipment sellers while Victoria focused on the technical side of the operation. They hired 3 workers from Mineral Park as the mine grew, turning it from a one-man operation into something substantial. As winter approached, they built a proper house near the mine, using profits from the first ore sales. Nothing fancy, but solid and warm, with real windows and a fireplace. Mrs. Patterson came out to see it and declared it lovely. "Your father would be proud," she told Victoria. "You've done well, dear. Both of you have." On a cold December evening, with the house finished and the mine producing steadily, Sam asked Victoria to marry him. They were sitting by the fire after a long day's work, and he suddenly dropped to one knee beside her chair. "I know we've only known each other 6 months," he said, "but I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you, Victoria Hartley. I love your strength and your determination and the way you honor your father's memory. I love the life we're building together. Will you marry me? Will you let me stay forever?" Victoria pulled him up and kissed him, her answer clear before she even spoke the words. "Yes. Yes, Sam Fletcher, I'll marry you." They were married in Mineral Park on Christmas Eve, 1878. Sheriff Cooper gave Victoria away, and Mrs. Patterson cried through the whole ceremony. The town turned out to celebrate, the church packed with people who'd come to respect the young woman who'd refused to let her father's killers win. The wedding night was gentle and sweet, Sam patient and tender with Victoria. They lay together afterward in their bed in their house, the fire casting dancing shadows on the walls. "I never thought I'd have this," Sam said, holding her close. "A home, a wife, a future worth planning for." "You almost didn't," Victoria said. "You were just passing through. What would have happened if you hadn't found me that morning? But I did find you. Maybe that's what I was drifting toward all those years. Maybe I just had to keep moving until I found where I belonged." She nestled closer to him. "And where's that? Right here with you, always." The years that followed were good ones. The mine prospered, producing high-quality ore that made Victoria and Sam comfortable, if not wealthy. They expanded slowly, reinvesting profits, building up the operation methodically. Sam proved to have a head for business, and Victoria's technical knowledge kept the mining operation efficient and safe. Their first child, a son they named Vernon Samuel, was born in the fall of 1879. Sam was there for the birth, holding Victoria's hand through the long labor. When he held his son for the first time, Victoria saw tears in his eyes. "He's perfect," Sam whispered. "God, Victoria, he's perfect. He has your eyes. And your stubborn chin, I think." He kissed her forehead. Thank you for giving me this, for giving me everything." Vernon was a year old when Victoria became pregnant again. Their daughter, Mary Grace, was born in 1881, small and fierce and loud. Sam doted on both children, playing with them in the evenings after work, reading to them from the books Victoria ordered from back east. "You're a natural father," Victoria told him one evening, watching him build blocks with Vernon while Mary napped nearby. "I'm learning," he said. "Every day I'm learning, but having you to learn with makes all the difference." The mine continued to produce well, and Sam proved as steady in family life as he was in business. He never drifted again, never showed any sign of wanting to leave. He was content with the life they'd built, with their children and their home and their work. On their 5th anniversary, Sam took Victoria back to the spot where her father was buried. They'd maintained the grave carefully over the years, and now a proper headstone marked the site. Victoria laid flowers at the base. "I kept my promise, Papa," she said quietly. "I built something lasting. The mine's doing well, and Sam and I have a good life. Vernon and Mary are healthy and growing. I wish you could have met them. I wish you could have known Sam." Sam put his arm around her. "He knows. Somehow I think he knows." They stood together in the desert wind, the sunset painting the rocks gold and red. After a while, Victoria said, "I used to hate that you came into my life the way you did, that my father had to die for me to meet you. It felt wrong to be happy when that happiness came from such tragedy. And now I think my father would want me to be happy. I think he'd approve of us. I think he'd be glad I wasn't alone." She looked up at him. "I still miss him every day, but I'm grateful for what I have, for what we've built together." "Me too." Sam kissed the top of her head. "I was lost for so long, Victoria. 13 years of just moving, never connecting, never staying. And then I found you, or you found me, and suddenly everything made sense. You gave me a reason to stop drifting. You gave me a home." As the years went on, their family grew again. Another son, James, was born in 1883, and a final daughter, Sarah, arrived in 1886. The house expanded to accommodate the growing family, and the mine operation grew as well. They became pillars of the Mineral Park community, known for their fair treatment of workers and their contributions to the town. Sam never spoke much about his years of drifting to others, but sometimes, late at night when the children were asleep, he'd tell Victoria stories about the places he'd been and the things he'd seen. She listened and held his hand, grateful that all that wandering had eventually led him to her. In 1890, Mineral Park began to decline as the mineral deposits in the area played out. Many miners moved on, chasing new strikes in other territories, but the Fletchers stayed. They diversified over the years, buying land for ranching, investing in the general store and the boarding house. Mrs. Patterson was getting older, and when she decided to retire, Sam and Victoria bought the boarding house and hired someone to run it. They owed that place too much to let it close. Their children grew strong and capable. Vernon, the eldest, showed an aptitude for engineering and talked about going to university back east. Mary became a skilled horsewoman and helped with the ranch operations. James was quiet and thoughtful, always rating, while Sarah was pure energy and mischief. On a warm evening in 1892, Sam and Victoria sat on the porch of their house, watching the sunset. The children were inside, the older ones helping the younger with evening chores. Vernon was 17 now, Mary 11, James 9, and Sarah 6. "We built a good life," Victoria said, leaning against Sam's shoulder. "Better than I could have imagined that terrible day." "We did." Sam's arm was around her, solid and warm. "And we're not done yet." Vernon's talking about engineering school. Mary wants to expand the horse breeding operation. James is pestering me to teach him the mine business, even though I keep telling him the mine's mostly played out. And Sarah wants to do everything all at once. Sam laughed. "She's like you in that way. Determined to prove she can do anything. I learned from the best. My father never treated me like I was less capable just because I was a woman, and you've done the same with our daughters. How could I do otherwise? Their mother proved a woman can do anything a man can and do it better." He kissed her hair. "Do you ever regret it? Staying here instead of going back east with the mining money, we could have had an easier life in a city." Victoria shook her head. "This is where my father's buried. This is where we built our home. This is where you stopped drifting and became the man you are now. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Even on the hard days, the days when the mine nearly failed, or the drought years, or when Vernon was so sick that winter, even then. Especially then, because we faced those days together." She turned to look at him. "You know what I think about sometimes? What would have happened if you just kept riding that morning? If you'd seen me passed out on the sheriff's office steps and decided it wasn't your problem? You'd probably still be drifting, never staying anywhere long enough to matter. And you'd have faced everything alone. You'd have survived, though. You're strong enough. Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to find out. I'm glad you stopped. I'm glad you stayed." Sam pulled her closer. "So am I. Best decision I ever made." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky darkened and stars began to appear. Inside, they could hear the children's voices, laughing about something. These sounds, this life, this peace, it was everything Sam had been searching for in 13 years of wandering. He'd been a drifter passing through, just another cowboy looking for work and a reason to keep moving. But Victoria had made him want to stay, had shown him that home wasn't a place but a person, a family, a life built together. And so the cowboy never left, had never even been tempted to leave again, because everything he needed was right here. In the following years, their lives continued to unfold with the rhythm of seasons and the steady passage of time. Vernon did go east for school, studying engineering in Boston, but he came home summers and always spoke of returning permanently once his education was complete. Mary married a neighboring rancher's son in 1895, a good man named Thomas who treated her as an equal partner. They built a house on Fletcher land and started their own horse breeding operation with Sam and Victoria's support. James took over most of the mining operations, such as they were. The original claim had largely played out, but there were still pockets of ore, and James approached the work with scientific precision, studying geology and mineral composition. Sarah, true to form, refused to settle on just one interest and somehow managed to help everyone with everything. The 20th century arrived, bringing changes to Arizona territory. Automobiles began appearing in the larger cities, though they were rare curiosities in Mineral Park. The talk was all of statehood, of Arizona joining the Union properly rather than remaining a territory. Sam and Victoria watched these changes with interest, but didn't let them alter the fundamental nature of their lives. "The world's speeding up," Sam said one evening in 1903. "All this talk of motor cars and aeroplanes and electric lights everywhere makes me feel old sometimes." "You're only 50, Victoria laughed. "That's not old. Feels it some days. My back reminds me every morning that I've spent 25 years working a mine and a ranch. 25 years of building something that matters. Look at what we have, Sam. 4 children, all grown or nearly grown, all healthy and happy. A ranch that's doing well. Investments that provide steady income. We've given jobs to dozens of families over the years. That's not nothing. Sam looked at her, his gray eyes still as keen as they'd been the day he found her on the sheriff's office steps. You're right, and I wouldn't change a moment of it. Well, maybe my aching back. Victoria was 45 now, her dark hair showing threads of silver, her face marked by years of desert sun and honest work. But to Sam, she was as beautiful as ever, more so perhaps because he knew every story those lines told, every experience that had shaped her into the woman she was. Their first grandchild arrived in 1904, a daughter born to Mary and Thomas. They named her Victoria, and Sam held his granddaughter with the same wonder he'd felt holding his own children. The cycle continued, life renewing itself, generations carrying forward what those before had built. Vernon returned from Boston in 1905 with a degree in engineering and a fiancée, a sharp-minded woman named Elizabeth who charmed the entire family within days of arriving. They married that fall and settled in Prescott, where Vernon took a position with a mining company, applying his education to improve safety and efficiency in the mines throughout the territory. As Sam and Victoria entered their 50s, they began gradually stepping back from the day-to-day operations of their various enterprises. James took over the mine completely. Mary and Thomas ran the ranch. Their investments were managed by a bank in Prescott, providing steady income without requiring constant oversight. For the first time in decades, Sam and Victoria had time to simply be together. They traveled some, visiting Vernon and Elizabeth in Prescott, taking a trip to San Francisco to see the ocean. But they always returned to Mineral Park, to the house they'd built together, to the land where Vernon Hartley was buried and where their life had truly begun. On a summer evening in 1908, exactly 30 years after Sam had found Victoria on those steps, they sat together on their porch as they'd done countless times before. Sarah, now 22, was inside preparing dinner. James was due back from the mine any moment. The other children would arrive tomorrow for a family gathering. 30 years, Victoria said softly. Has it really been 30 years? Seems like yesterday sometimes. Other times feels like I've always known you, like there was never a time before you. Do you ever think about the man you were before? The drifter who spent 13 years moving from place to place? Sam considered the question. Sometimes. Mostly I feel sorry for him. He was lost and didn't even know it. Thought he was free, moving wherever he wanted, but really he was just running from everything that mattered. What changed? I mean, I know you helped me because it was the right thing to do, but when did it become more than that? The moment I saw you, Sam said simply. I know that sounds like something from a dime novel, but it's true. You were sitting on those steps, exhausted and scared but not defeated. Even then, I could see your strength, and something in me just knew. This was what I'd been looking for. This was why I'd been drifting, to find you. Victoria took his hand, lacing their fingers together as she'd done 1,000 times before. My father used to say that everything happens for a reason. I didn't believe him, especially after he died. It seemed so senseless, so wrong, but maybe he was right. Maybe I had to lose him to find you. I'd give anything for him to have lived, for you to have had more time with him. I know, but we can't change the past. We can only be grateful for what we have now. She smiled at him. And I am grateful, Sam Fletcher. For you, for our children, for this life we built together. You were a drifter passing through, but you stayed. You stayed for me, and that made all the difference." He leaned over and kissed her, gentle and sweet, the kiss of two people who knew each other completely and loved what they knew. "And I'd make the same choice every time. Every single time." The years continued their steady march. More grandchildren arrived as Vernon and Elizabeth had children, as James eventually married a schoolteacher named Helen. As Sarah finally settled down with a cavalry officer she met at a dance in Prescott. The house that had once echoed with Sam and Victoria's children now filled with grandchildren during holidays and special occasions. Arizona achieved statehood in 1912, and Sam and Victoria celebrated with their entire family. They'd helped build this state. They'd worked this land and raised their children here, and seeing it officially recognized as part of the Union felt like a validation of all those years of work and struggle. Sam's hair went fully gray, then white. Victoria's hands, once smooth despite the hard work, became gnarled with arthritis. They moved slower, tired more easily, but they were together. That was what mattered. They'd grown old side by side, watching their children and grandchildren build their own lives, seeing the legacy of Vernon Hartley and the love between a drifter and a miner's daughter continue into new generations. On a spring morning in 1922, 44 years after that fateful day when Sam found Victoria on the sheriff's office steps, they walked together to Vernon Hartley's grave. It was something they did every year on the anniversary of his death, a pilgrimage to honor the man whose death had brought them together and whose dream they'd fulfilled. The gravestone was weathered now, but still legible. Victoria laid fresh flowers at its base, as she always did. "We did it, Papa," she said. "Everything you wanted. The mine produced for over 30 years. We built a home, raised a family. Your grandchildren are grown now with children of their own. Your great-grandchildren carry your name. We built something lasting." Sam stood beside her, his arm around her waist. They were both 70 now, their bodies marked by age and hard work, but their love was as strong as ever. Stronger, perhaps, deepened by decades of shared joys and sorrows, triumphs and struggles. As they walked back to their house, moving slowly but steadily, Victoria said, "Do you remember what I asked you once? What would have happened if you'd kept riding that morning?" "I remember. I've thought about that more and more lately, how one choice changed everything. If you'd decided I wasn't your problem, if you'd ridden on to wherever you were going, our entire lives would be different. Our children would never have been born. All those grandchildren wouldn't exist. It's staggering to think about how much rested on that one moment." "But I didn't keep riding," Sam said. "I stopped, and I'm glad I did, Victoria. Even knowing everything that came after, all the hard times and struggles, I'd still make the same choice. You made me want to stay. You showed me what I was missing in all those years of drifting. You gave me a home, a family, a reason to put down roots. That's worth everything." They reached their porch and sat in the chairs they'd occupied for so many evenings. Their children would arrive soon for Sunday dinner, bringing the grandchildren. The house would fill with noise and laughter and life. But for now, it was just the two of them, sitting in comfortable silence, watching the desert they'd both come to love. "The cowboy never left," Victoria said softly. "After all these years, you're still here." Sam took her hand. "Where else would I be? This is my home. You're my home. Always have been, always will be." As the sun climbed higher in the Arizona sky, they sat together, two people who'd found each other in tragedy and built a life in love. Sam had been a drifter, lost and searching for something he couldn't name. Victoria had been alone and desperate, fighting for her father's legacy and her own survival. Together, they'd created something neither could have managed alone. A family, a legacy, a love story that had started in violence and grief, but had grown into something beautiful and enduring. The sound of horses and a motor car announced the arrival of their family. Sarah and her husband in their automobile, James and Helen with their children in a wagon, Mary and Thomas on horseback with their youngest grandson. Vernon and Elizabeth would arrive from Prescott this evening. The house would be full, just as Sam and Victoria liked it. As their children and grandchildren descended on the house with hugs and greetings, and the controlled chaos of a large family gathering, Sam and Victoria exchanged a glance that said everything words couldn't. They'd done well. They'd built something that would outlast them, something that honored Vernon Hartley's memory and justified Sam's decision to stay all those decades ago. That evening, with dinner finished and the children playing outside while the adults talked on the porch, Vernon raised a glass in a toast. "To Mom and Dad," he said, "for showing us what love looks like, for building something from nothing, for never giving up even when things were hard. Everything we have, everything we are, comes from your strength and your love. Thank you." The family echoed the toast, and Victoria felt tears prickling her eyes. Sam squeezed her hand, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Later, after everyone had left and they were alone again, preparing for bed in the house that had sheltered them for over 40 years, Victoria said, "It was a good life, wasn't it?" "Is," Sam corrected. "It is a good life. We're not done yet," she laughed. "No, I suppose we're not. As long as we're both breathing, there's more life to live." "Exactly." He pulled her close, and they stood together in the lamplight, two people who'd found each other when they needed it most and had built a love that lasted through decades. "I love you, Victoria Fletcher. Have since the day I met you, will until the day I die. And I love you, Sam Fletcher, my drifter who stayed, my cowboy who never left." They had many more years together, watching their grandchildren grow and eventually welcoming great-grandchildren. They celebrated 50 years of marriage in 1928, surrounded by a family that numbered in the dozens. The house was packed to bursting, with people spilling out into the yard. 3 generations gathered to honor the couple who'd started it all. Sam gave a speech that day, standing on the porch with Victoria beside him, looking out at all the faces that existed because a drifter had stopped and a young woman had fought for what was hers. 50 years ago," he said, "I was a man with no purpose, no home, no family. I'd spent 13 years drifting because I didn't believe in staying. Then I found a woman sitting on the sheriff's office steps and everything changed. She was strong when I was lost. She had roots when I had none. She taught me that home isn't a place you're born, it's a place you choose. And I chose this. I chose her, and that choice gave me all of you." He looked down at Victoria, still beautiful to him even in old age, her eyes still bright with the spirit that had first captured his heart. "She made me want to stay, and I never regretted it, not for one moment. This life we built together, this family we raised, this is what matters. This is what lasts." The applause was thunderous, and Victoria stood and kissed him, not caring that the whole family was watching. Let them see. Let them know what real love looked like. Love that lasted through decades, through hardship and joy, through everything life could throw at it. They lived to see the 1930s, though the years were catching up with them both. Sam's heart was weak, and Victoria's arthritis made movement difficult. But they still sat on their porch in the evenings, still held hands, still talked about their life together. Sam died peacefully in his sleep in 1934, at the age of 81 with Victoria beside him. He'd lived 56 years as a married man, nearly 4 times as long as he'd spent drifting. His last words to Victoria were, "Best choice I ever made. Thank you for letting me stay." Victoria mourned him deeply, but she didn't crumble. Their children surrounded her with love and support, keeping her close. She lived 3 more years, long enough to hold a great-great-grandchild, long enough to see the legacy she and Sam had built stretch into a 4th generation. When Victoria died in 1937, at the age of 79, she was buried beside Sam on the land they'd worked, not far from where her father rested. The 3 graves stood together: Vernon Hartley, who discovered the claim; Victoria Hartley Fletcher, who'd fought for it; and Samuel Fletcher, who'd helped her build it into something lasting. Their family gathered one last time: children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, dozens of people who existed because a drifter passing through had decided to stay. Stories were shared, tears were shed, but mostly there was gratitude. Gratitude for 2 people who'd shown them what love looked like, what it meant to build something together, to honor commitments and face adversity with strength and grace. Vernon, their eldest, now nearly 60 himself with grandchildren of his own, stood at his mother's grave and said, "They built this family on nothing but determination and love. Dad had lost everything when he met Mom. She was alone and fighting for her life. But they found each other, and they built something that's going to last for generations. That's the legacy they left us. Not the land or the money or the property, but the example of what 2 people can create when they refuse to give up on each other." The sun set over the Arizona desert, painting the sky in brilliant colors, and the Fletcher family stood together, united by the love story of a drifter and a miner's daughter who'd found each other in tragedy and built a life in joy. Sam had been passing through with no intention of staying. But Victoria had made him want to stop, had shown him that home was worth finding. And the cowboy had never left, had stayed true to his choice for 56 years, proving that sometimes the best things in life come from the moments when we decide to stop running and start building. Their story lived on in the family they'd created, in the land they'd worked, in the love they'd shared. A testament to the power of choosing to stay, of fighting for what matters, of building something that lasts. The drifter and the miner's daughter, together forever in the desert they'd both called home, their love story complete and their legacy secure.